Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today's video is going to be a bit of a yap session while I talk about Pokemon that I think are winners and losers from the big meta update, Forever Forward, that was just announced yesterday. Now, this video does not in any way replace the big analysis video that I typically do before the start of every season. Analysis does take time, so that video is still in progress, but I did still want to get some thoughts out there talking about some Pokemon that I do think are probably worth giving a look before the season starts, because at least on paper, they are looking pretty strong, and a few Pokemon that I would definitely probably try and shy away from. Let's start with the positives, let's start with the winners. The first winner I think is going to be Kanto Ninetales. I saw there was a lot of people requesting grass buffs. They are tired of the water types, and well, here's your grass type. Its name is Kanto Ninetales. They might say, Henry, Kanto Ninetales is not a grass type. Well, the thing I have to say about that is, I feel like the best Pokemon that have used grass charge moves in Great League have always been Pokemon that aren't grass types. Being a grass type is inherently a pretty massive liability. It opens you up to a ton of weaknesses, but being a Pokemon that isn't a grass type that has grass coverage can honestly put you in a pretty good spot. And this is where Kanto Ninetales enters the equation. Kanto Ninetales for its Calm Day got a legacy move of Energy Ball, and Energy Ball is getting massively reworked. It's becoming cheaper and it's dealing less damage. The estimated parameters for it are 80 damage for 45 energy. This is a very big deal because Kanto Ninetales uses Legacy Ember, which is 9 energy per Ember, which means that Kanto Ninetales will be able to spam out Energy Ball, which is an incredible coverage move into the waters every 10 turns. That is incredibly fast pacing. This would make the regular Kanto Ninetales have win cons and be able to win all evens against Shadow Quagsire, which is just absolutely absurd. But that is the speed of Ninetales. Ninetales is going to be able to keep pace with a lot of the waters that previously just completely overran it. It needed an energy head start to have any kind of hope. But in a scenario like this, you could, in theory, lead Kanto Ninetales into Feraligatr, bait once with a Weather Ball, and then suddenly you're outpacing Feraligatr. This pacing is absolutely crazy, and I think Kanto Ninetales, at least if the parameters go to 80-45, which is what I'm expecting, could be a pretty big contender in this new updated Forever Forward meta. I feel like it's been a bit since we've had a new fire type burst onto the scene. Talonflame's been around for a while. We've had Charizard with all kinds of variations of different fast moves, probably since Skeledirge. When Skeledirge first burst onto the scene, we haven't really had a fire type rise to a meta status, and I think that Kanto Ninetales potentially could be a contender. Now obviously this is heavily dependent on the energy cost of Energy Ball. It's not confirmed yet. If it's 45, Ninetales is looking very strong. If it's 50 or more, then Ninetales probably not going to be doing nearly as much. But I think this is probably the best we're going to get as far as meta grass types. A lot of grass types just end up being very RPS. They're very alignment dependent, and that's why people tend to not want grass buffs, even though water's very strong. But having a Pokemon that isn't a grass type have grass attacks, that definitely piques my interest. The next Pokemon that we're going to talk about on our big winners list is a Mud Boy, and that Pokemon is Seismitoad. Now, Seismitoad, some of you might have even forgot was in the game, because Seismitoad, it has never done anything in PvP for its entire lifetime. Metas have risen, metas have fallen, and Seismitoad has just been there. Seismitoad hasn't even been a limited Metamon, it's been a zero Metamon. But Seismitoad is looking very, very interesting in this upcoming season. Seismitoad is getting a brand new charge attack, Icy Wind. With Icy Wind, Seismitoad is going to be able to spam out guaranteed attack drops every 10 turns. But Seismitoad was not finished. Seismitoad, its charge attack Earth Power is getting buffed. It's going to become cheaper from 90-55 to 90-50. That means Seismitoad not only will be able to spam out Icy Winds every 10 turns, I believe it should have 12-12-10 pacing to Earth Power and be able to double up on Earth Power as well. So suddenly Seismitoad goes from 0 to hero. Seismitoad looks like it could be a very strong core breaker to the Empoleon Altaria core, which, as we know, is always around because Icy Wind would shred the Altaria, and then you have Earth Power to absolutely crush the Empoleon. Seismitoad, when I was very briefly looking at Sims, also appeared to be very strong up a little amount of energy. So potentially, depending on how the meta shakes out, maybe Seismitoad ends up being used as a save switch, because normally with the Mud Boys, you would like to send in some kind of a grass or send in some kind of a flyer, but with the Icy Wind coverage to hit back for super effective there, Seismitoad looks like it can hold its own. Now, being a Mud Boy is very tough right now because Quagsire absolutely dominates the current open Great League meta. I think Seismitoad's unique coverage could help it stand out from Quagsire, but with Quagsire already being so dominant, I don't know if Seismitoad is going to break into the top meta status, because Quagsire really has a stranglehold over the niche of being the best Mud Boy. The next Pokemon on my list of winners, despite everything I said in the Kanto Ninetales segment, is an actual grass type, and that is Jumpluff. With Energy Ball getting reworked, if it ends up being 80-45, then Jumpluff is back in a very big way. Jumpluff received a pretty massive nerf, with Aerial Ace becoming more expensive. This removed Jumpluff's 5-4 pacing, and instead it was stuck with Aerial Ace every 10 turns, and Aerial Ace is a spectacularly terrible move. But with Energy Ball suddenly dropping to 45 energy, at least that's what we're projecting, then suddenly it would still have that same 10-turn pacing, but it would have a significantly better move. And that is really, really nice for Jumpluff. Jumpluff would be able to actually keep pace with a lot of the waters. Previously, Jumpluff actually had some pretty significant lose cons in a Pokemon like Feraligatr, just because they reached Ice Beam when you reach the Energy Ball. With Energy Ball now being every 10 turns, as long as it's 45 energy, then Jumpluff would actually be a very effective anti-water. Add to that the fact that Jumpluff already has Acrobatics, which is an incredibly efficient nuke move, then Jumpluff might have a chance of coming back to the meta. Now, there are some meta conditions that do make it a little bit tricky for Jumpluff. Like, Tinkaton existing is definitely tough, because Tinkaton now is Gigaton Hammer, which is way better of a move neutrally than Play Rough, back when Jumpluff could actually hold its own against Tinkaton. But I do think that Jumpluff will be meaningfully improved and will be a contender to try and win one of those flyer spots in the meta. The next Pokemon on my big winners list is a Pokemon that I figured at some point they had to eventually buff it, but oh my goodness, they absolutely took a massive swing, and that Pokemon is Sylveon. Yes, the evolution. It's getting Fairy Wind and Shadow Ball. Now, Sylveon really has not been a playable PvP Pokemon in quite some time. So people may not remember, Sylveon actually has pretty good bulk. It's around 1900 stat product in the Open Great League, and it already has Legacy Psyshock. Now that you add Fairy Wind and Shadow Ball into the mix, and Sylveon is going to be a very fast fairy type, a very bulky fairy type. It is coverage of the poisons with Psyshock, and it has Shadow Ball, which will give it incredible coverage and an ability to hit steel types, which previously it could never do. This right away should catapult Sylveon into immediate playable territory. There are a lot of fairy types right now that are playable. The Tinkatons of the world. We of course have Togekiss, which is the #1 fairy type in the meta. And Togekiss, part of why it thrives is very fast pacing and that ability to hit steals. So Sylveon, I could definitely see being a pretty strong kind of A to B tier fairy type, where I don't think it's going to surpass Togekiss, because Togekiss is just absolutely absurd with how strong it is in the current Open Great League meta. But I think Sylveon is going to be very strong. Additionally, I believe Sylveon is actually eligible for the upcoming NAIC meta. And Sylveon looks pretty decent there as well. It's very bulky with Shadow Ball. It can hit for super effective into a lot of the psychic types that are rated very, very highly in that meta. And it looks like that Sylveon as a save switch cannot effectively be answered by Galarian Weezing due to the fact that Sylveon up a tiny amount of energy with the Fairy Wind spam is going to be able to spam out the Psyshocks, tank Sludge, and actually pressure away switch advantage or shield advantage from the opponent. So even if it doesn't end up rising to the top of the Open Great League, purely off the fact that it looks very, very interesting for NAIC as well, which is an upcoming limited meta that we'll have for the first 2 weeks of the new season, I am very much looking forward to see what Sylveon can do. The next Pokemon on the winners list is a Pokemon that I am a lot less confident about. It's on the winners list because it is massively improved, but will this be enough to break it into the meta? I do have some pretty significant reservations. However, this is one of my favorite Pokemon, so I'm going to talk about it anyway. Let's talk about Ledian. Ledian this season is getting Rollout and Acrobatics, continuing the developers' trend of trying to buff Ledian. So far, they have never been successful. Ledian has still never really been playable. They ended up giving it Counter back when Counter had gotten nerfed in the same update, so it really didn't do a lot for it. It's had buffs to like Dynamic Punch, it's had buffs to a lot of different moves, and it never really moved the needle. But this is two pretty massive buffs. Rollout is the fast move, Acrobatics as the nuke, so Ledian would be running Rollout, Acrobatics, and Dynamic Punch. This does make Ledian very strong in the zeros. I believe Ledian up 1 rollout has like a 70% win rate in the zeros, but Ledian on even energy looks a lot more human, and the more shields that are in play, Ledian does kind of get exposed over time because it does not get same type attack bonus on Dynamic Punch. It does on Acrobatics, but Acrobatics is pretty expensive. So the more shields that are in play, usually the worse it's going to be for Ledian. Now, I do have my reservations. I don't think Ledian is going to be breaking into the meta as like a top meta threat. But with this moveset, if you're able to play it as more of like a spicy sweeper, where if you're able to get a little bit of energy, then I think it could be a Pokemon that is a component of winning teams. So that's probably more than can ever have been said for Ledian in the Open Great League. So I'm pretty happy. It's definitely getting better, and that's part of why I put it on the winners tab. It's a little bit of bias here, I can't lie, I just like Ledian. But all in all, we've talked about the winners. Now let's talk about the losers. The first loser, and boy does it feel good to see this Pokemon on a list of losers, is Wigglytuff. Charm is getting nerfed from 13 to 12. I have been asking for a Wigglytuff nerf for ages. They ended up reworking Charm at some point, which arguably wasn't even a nerf. I had hopes it was going to be a nerf, but it was not. They ended up giving it a bunch of energy generation, so even though they took away some of the damage, it basically balanced out, so Wigglytuff was still absurdly strong. Finally, the developers are taking a swing and trying to make Wigglytuff go away. Did they do enough to make it fully go away? I think the answer is no. I think they needed to be more aggressive and nerf it from 13 to 11 if they wanted Wigglytuff to not be around. Wigglytuff, part of why it stays around forever and ever and ever is the typing. Normal Fairy is just an insanely good typing. Basically, nothing else is a normal fairy, and it had a pretty good moveset. It had Icy Wind for debuffs, so based on that typing, it was pretty much always going to have play. If we want Wigglytuff to finally depart from the meta, and it's been around for absolute ages, the way to do so would be a further nerf than this. This nerf does hurt its neutral matchups. Wigglytuff goes from a Pokemon with strong neutral matchups to a Pokemon with mediocre neutral matchups. Players who like to run Wigglytuff are still going to try and run Wigglytuff. They're not going to have the same results as they had before. I wouldn't be surprised to see it still be played because people like running D-Gen stuff in the Go Battle League, but we should see it less, which does bring me quite a bit of happiness. Now, the next Pokemon I have to talk about on the losers list is a Pokemon that is getting massively buffed. So why is it on the losers list? Well, we're talking about Rayquaza. Rayquaza is getting a big Dragon Ascent rework. Currently, Dragon Ascent is 150-70, and Rayquaza is a completely unplayable Pokemon in the Master League. It basically loses to everything, which is a real shame because Rayquaza used to be a genuine meta threat. But unfortunately, the absolute gutting of Breaking Swipe due to the fact that it was just broken on Steelix really hurt Rayquaza. Because Rayquaza, it had no pacing, it couldn't really do any kind of meaningful damage in a good amount of time. The synergy of Rayquaza's massive attack stat, but no bulk, with the Breaking Swipe guaranteed debuffs was really good, and now it no longer has that. Well, they're trying to fix the pacing issue with Rayquaza. They are going to be reworking Dragon Ascent from 150-70 to 110-45. This is estimated. We know it's going to be 110. I'm estimating it's going to be 45. That would make it a very efficient move. Now, a move getting significantly cheaper should be a plus, but unfortunately, it's not enough to make Rayquaza have any kind of viability in the Open Master League. Even though Dragon Ascent is an incredibly powerful move, Rayquaza is going to always be in a tough spot where if Dragon Ascent gets shielded, it's kind of just getting completely destroyed. It doesn't have that ability to kind of prolong matchups with Breaking Swipe anymore. So I think if you're looking for hope for Rayquaza, it's that with this rework, I think it will actually make it a very playable mon in the Mega Master League. With Mega Rayquaza, it has significantly better stats, and with those significantly better stats, suddenly you no longer miss the fact that you don't have Breaking Swipe as much. Suddenly you can actually tank some hits and start spamming out quick Dragon Ascents, which even if it's down to 110 would still hit for a ton of damage coming from a Pokemon with the attack stat of Mega Rayquaza. So while it's not going to do much in the Master League, I think it could be very interesting in the Mega Master League, and I assume that's what the change is for. They're kind of cutting the losses on Master League Rayquaza, but for Mega Masters, which is a format that is returning later this season, I think that Rayquaza could actually be quite playable. Will it be top meta? Time will tell. We'll have to see what the energy cost is on Dragon Ascent, but unfortunately, I would still put it in the losers camp, because when I first saw the rework, I had high hopes, but after simming it, man, that is pretty rough. Speaking of Pokemon that are very rough to sim, next on the losers list is Gigalith. Gigalith is getting Lock On. Very rarely have I seen a Pokemon sim as poorly as Lock On Gigalith does. Now, Gigalith does have access to Meteor Beam and Superpower. So in theory, one might imagine if you could just endlessly spam out incredibly fast and efficient Meteor Beams, how would that be a negative thing? Surely that would be pretty good. Well, I did end up simming it, and oh my goodness, it was just an absolute nightmare of a sim. I believe it was single-digit % win rate. We are talking like a 6% win rate in the twos or something like that. And I want to say it was like a 8% win rate in the ones or something. It was dismal. And that's really unfortunate. I think Gigalith is a really cool mon. I wish this update did more for it, but man, it turns out being able to do fast move damage is actually a pretty good thing. And unless your name is Aegislash and you can switch forms into this hyper offensive absolute demon that can pick up one-hit KOs left and right, not doing any fast move pressure will usually put you in a pretty negative spot. So unfortunately, Gigalith does end up on the list of losers, much to my chagrin. I do really like Gigalith, but it does not seem to lock on is a big help for it. And that kind of concludes today's Yap session. I wanted to try and get some information out there early while I work on a more put together deep dive where I cover basically every change. I get to sim all of them, take a look at what they can look like, and kind of provide my thoughts there. But I wanted to provide some early thoughts, kind of wins and losses from this update. One thing that I am a little bit worried about is I do think that with buffs to moves like Earth Power and Wrap, we could see some of the Mud Slappers return to the meta, like specifically Gastrodon is getting buffed, and with Wrap and Earth Power getting buffed, Toadscruel. I viewed Mudslap's presence in the meta as pretty unhealthy overall because the Mudslappers were very inflexible. One could argue that the most flexible Mudslapper, Marowak, is the one that they're not bringing back. They're keeping Marowak down, but the really RPS ones, which were the Gastrodon and the Toadscruel, those are the ones getting buffed. So I do have some worries there because I really did not like the Mudslapper's presence in the meta, and I do feel that the meta is better without them. Time will tell. Will they come back? I hope the answer is no. I'm not sure, but I figured I'd put that kind of towards the end just as an initial worry that I have about the meta, because Kanto Ninetales does look incredibly cool. A lot of the Pokemon, like Jumpluff, also looks really cool. All the Pokemon from the winner side of the list, they look like cool new additions to the meta, and I hope that they do get that opportunity to shine. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.